Was it like, I need to get some initial advertisers for the website and then find basically a big launch partner to launch the print magazine? That was how it was?
Yeah, I was like, I needed to just break even because, again, I had no reserve or no capital. I didn't want to borrow money. So I basically crunched the numbers of what it would cost me to print 50,000 of the first magazine, get it distributed, get people to write it, what that number was. I figured that out kind of in the springtime and then spent the next 6 months just going out trying to break even on it. I think we probably finished with maybe 10 to 12 partners that bought into that first issue, but it covered us and then some, and that helped us then fund issue 2.
Hello, I'm Simon Owens, and this is The Business of Content, the show about how publishers create, distribute, and monetize their digital content. After spending several years helping launch food and travel magazines in London, Krista Faist returned to Toronto with a simple idea: replicate the free magazine model that was thriving across the UK transit system. In 2015, she launched 22 Media Group and started building 2 media outlets into lifestyle brands focused on food, travel, and culture. What began as a one-person operation has since grown into a media company spanning print, digital, events, and now short-form video. In a recent interview, Faist explained how she landed major advertisers before the first print issue ever launched, why she still believes premium print magazines have real value in a digital-first media landscape, and how 22 Media Group is expanding into vertical video and creator partnerships while keeping print at the center of the business. If you want to listen to an audio version of this show, subscribe to The Business of Content wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching this on YouTube, gently tap on that subscribe button so you can consume more interviews with the world's most successful media entrepreneurs. Okay, let's jump into the interview. Hey, Krista, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So super excited to talk to you. You run a media company. It looks like it's basically 2 separate magazines that are based in the Toronto area. So I really want to get into the origin story. I was looking at your LinkedIn. I was reading up on the media company itself. Let's start. What's the name of the media company? The overarching media company?
Yeah, it's called 22 Media Group.
22 Media Group. So it looks like you founded that in 2015, and I will get into like how this works exactly, but it looks like it was a spin-off from a media company you're already working for. So like what was your background prior to founding this? It looked like you majored in journalism and stuff like that. I'd love to just hear about kind of the run up to the launch of this media company and what you were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you've done your research. That all tracks. That's exactly what happened. But yeah, so I got my start going to Ryerson, now TMU, for journalism. I knew from my parents say when I was like 12, I was like, I'm going to be a news reporter. And I never faulted from that. That's what I wanted to do. So Ryerson was kind of the only school I applied for, the only plan. And I was originally in broadcast journalism, which I realized quickly in that through internships that it was a dwindling industry. And so it was really hard because that was like my whole dream, my whole life. But then when I was actually in it, to see that there wasn't a huge future in it was hard. But looking back now, I'm really fortunate that I had that background and the professional background that the degree got me, because I also got to tap into magazine, newspaper, and not to age myself, but there was a budding program called online journalism at the time, which they're like, this will be the next big thing. So clearly they were right. And so I kind of got to learn a lot of the different facets of it, but I did stray from there once I kind of saw that there was not a lot of jobs in it. I moved into marketing and PR and got a lot of experience under my belt in that type of space, but working with big brands, understanding what their needs are, what their goals are, and working more on the kind of experiential and PR side of things, but still really good backgrounder for me. And then it just gets a bit funky because at 25, I was just bored and thought, this is my chance to book a one-way ticket somewhere. And I did. I'd always wanted to live somewhere. It was a New York or London thing. London was really easy to get a visa at the time. So that was choice number 1. And I booked a one-way ticket there and just kind of started from nothing all over again, but wanting to do something in the marketing, PR, journalism space. So I started as an intern, just doing everything that you would think, running things to press, being on the other side of it, going to these big magazine publishers and delivering them cookies or last minute items they needed for a shoot, but getting to kind of see that space from another side. And then slowly then worked my way over into a publishing house called Square Up Media. And that's where all this started, because they were working in the luxury lifestyle space with a men's lifestyle publication and a really kind of high-end hedge fund magazine. So at first, those two things didn't necessarily resonate with me, but why I came on board is because they had talked about launching more mass consumer titles in food and travel, two things that I loved, that most people love. So I thought it was the dream. I was like, okay, I get to work at this like independent publishing house in these two verticals I love. And so I helped launch Foodism and Escapism there. This was in 2014, and worked with the brands kind of as the head of marketing for a few years and learned all the facets of that space. I was so lucky. There was about 40 people in the office and I sat right in the middle as marketing. So I got to learn how the salespeople talked. I got to learn how the editorial director worked. I just absorbed so much that when Canada was calling and I was missing my family and wanted to move home, I talked to the founder there and said, I think there's a gap in Toronto. I would love to try these two titles over there. Would you let me do it? And he said yes. And he absolutely just like believed in me and said, yes, go do it. And I booked my ticket back, and the next morning kind of opened my laptop and started work on Canadian Foodism and Escapism, and fully kind of worked on it independently. I had a lot of like ears from them and a lot of guidance in the beginning, but from day one, it was really important to me that I was an independent company and kind of doing it my way and building my own legacy. And that was 10 years ago now.
So there's a lot to unpack there. So you went to go work for this publishing house in London, and was it while you were doing the hiring process, they were like, we're thinking of launching these two new brands and we need someone to run the marketing for them? Like what was kind of the entree to that exact role?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So I knew of the two men's titles, and that's what I had originally seen and was excited enough about. But during the interview process, learned that they were going to start dipping into more of the food and travel space. So it just made me want that job that much more. And that's where it was kind of serendipitous, because I was like, well, this is great, because not going to lie, I didn't have a ton of experience in the men's luxury space, but I happen to know food and travel really well. So if you guys are going that way, I'm the perfect person for it. So it really was kind of meant to be that I found that out through the interview process. And then they also found that out about me, that I had that experience.
And so there were these two brands, Escapism and Foodism, and it's basically, was it launched as like two print magazines that were covering specifically London, right?
Yeah, the way we say it, and same with the Toronto versions, is we're writing for a Londoner, or we're writing for a Torontonian, but it's, those people are eating down the street as much as they are once or twice a year planning a trip to somewhere to eat at a Michelin restaurant. And same with travel. They're taking a road trip one weekend, but they're also taking an 8-hour flight maybe once or twice a year. So we're writing for the people in the city, but it's the behaviors of what they're doing, which allows us to write about things globally.
So you would write, even though it was a London reader, like what was it, like 50% of the coverage was like London eateries, and then you were also like covering high-end places in like Paris or or like Istanbul and stuff like that?
Exactly.
And what was the difference between Escapism and Foodism? Was Escapism just like every other non-food category for travelers, or?
Yeah, it was very focused on Foodism. Has a lot more roots in the local city, because there's restaurants and bars and just that whole city culture. Whereas Escapism was all about vacations, what you were doing to escape the city almost. So it was everything else that was going on when you weren't eating in the city. So you were still going around the world, and maybe culinary was what was pulling you, as it is for a lot of people. But it was the idea of getting on a plane or getting in a car and escaping the city. And we were writing about travel, everywhere from a train ride away to a flight away. It was the travel side of it, which allowed us to engage with which I'm sure we'll get to, but allowed us to engage in a whole new kind of set of advertisers that way.
Yeah. And so we're still talking about the London version here. So like, was it, obviously this was 2013, there was probably a web version, but was this primarily like a free print magazine that was going out like once a month or something like that?
Yeah, and that was the biggest thing I learned moving over there was this whole model of free print magazines that was not only existed but was thriving and was doing really well. The top circulating titles in different categories were the free magazines that you would get at the tube station every morning. So I would look forward to every morning between Monday and Friday waking up, going to my tube station and knowing which magazine I was getting physically handed. There were people right outside just handing it to you. So there was things across women's lifestyle, men's lifestyle, sports, Time Out, iconic global brand. There was ES magazine. So we fit right into that. So we would be out, I think Foodism was out Tuesday mornings, Escapism was out the following Tuesday, Square Mile was out maybe Wednesday, but Foodism and Escapism were monthly at the time, so we were doing 12 of them, and I believe Escapism was every other month, so we were doing 6 of them. But yeah, on a Tuesday, you would wake up in any tube station in the city, you would be handed Foodism.
Like you were actually employing like people whose specific job it was to go stand there and just hand it as people were going into the tube.
Yes. Yeah.
And then it was primarily like print ads. Like that was the business model.
100% ad funded. So that was the content was entirely free, both in print, digital. Anything we did was free. Even the reader events that we were doing to connect advertisers to our readers were always free. Advertisers were funding 100% of our production and content.
And were the advertisers, were they like local advertisers, or were you able to go after more kind of global travel brands and stuff like that?
Yeah, I was actually much more leaning towards global large brands. In London, we still work with a lot of like large grocers. So like the big national grocers would be big ones for us, big alcohol brands. So actually a lot less of the local. You can imagine in the hospitality space, there isn't a lot of money in it. And so it was actually the larger brands that were funding it.
Yeah. And so you were the head of the marketing. So what did your job entail when you were in London?
I wore a lot of hats. I know people say that, but I'm so grateful for it now because I was able to understand so many parts of the business that way. So I handled all the distribution. I didn't employ everybody. I was in charge of the third party that did employ everybody. So we had one company that worked with all of the brand ambassadors, and on a Tuesday morning rush hour and Tuesday night rush hour, we would have like 50 reps across London handing out. And so there was one company that was in charge of all of them and all the logistics of that. We also had a company that was in charge of fulfilling the magazines in different stands across the city, because we were in some grocers and other retailers. So I was in charge of managing those relationships and making sure that the magazines every month got to where they needed to. Foodism had a circa of 100,000. So there's a lot of copies that either went out at the tube stations or went to homes and needing to handle, not just for Foodism, but all 4 titles. I did all of the PR. So anytime we had a new issue, created the press releases, pitched to, if we had like a celebrity interview, I would pitch that to the Daily Mail and try and get them to cover it. Handled all of our events. So a lot on the Square Mile side, we had a lot of like watch events and men's wear events. So have to kind of coordinate all of those. And then overall marketing initiatives, if we wanted to grow our newsletter database, we wanted to grow social followers, how to do contesting, how to partner with local businesses, all of that. So I think that was most of it. And that allowed me to obviously just touch every part of the business.
And how important was like the website back then, or like the digital operations versus the print operations?
I think I watched it become, like I was right at that tipping point where it started to become big for us, and we started to really generate revenue on it, and started to see visitors come to it, not just relying on the magazine, but actually building this really strong database. I would say that the newsletter was probably more important to us at the time. That building the database of that and getting people engaging in the newsletter was a huge push for us, and we really watched those numbers climb. But yeah, I was kind of right at that point where digital started to really up and kind of give print a run for its money in terms of where our revenue was coming from. So we were starting to employ people dedicated just to digital articles and just to newsletters. So that was a really exciting time.
So in 2015, you pitched your boss on launching these 2 magazines in Toronto. What was the specific pitch? Because it seems like there's a separate media entity that you own that maybe owns or licenses what were you specifically pitching to them?
Yeah, so the pitch was interesting because it was the founder at the time and myself, me saying, I want to go home, and him going, we're sad to lose you. Maybe we could figure out a way that we could all work together and continue this partnership we've been building. And so we both kind of had a light bulb moment. It was like, well, what if I'm really passionate about these 2 brands? There's nothing like them in Toronto. There was stuff in the men's lifestyle space, and it wasn't really a passion of mine. So that was kind of easy for me to park those. And I said, with these 2 brands, Foodism and Escapism, I think there's a gap over there. No one's doing the freemium handout model either. Would you be okay? Like, we've built this trust up. Would you be okay if I took them to Canada? And he said, put together a business plan. Let's go meet at the pub next week and talk through it in typical British style. And that's what I did. I put together a business plan. We met at the pub. We looked at it. It all made sense. For me, it was really important that I showed him that there was a gap for it and that I could hit the ground running when I got here with connections I had and ideas I had. And once we saw that, it was a kind of handshake agreement that I would go back, incorporate as a Canadian entity and start operations, and they would be a part of it in some capacity. And I won't get into the kind of back and forth about what happened after that, but they aren't any longer a part of it, and it's just 100% me.
Yeah, so you launched a new entity that you owned, and they own some equity of it, but now you 100% own all the equity for this new company. So you land in Toronto. What resources are you? Because I was doing some research on that. I think it was just you to start out with. What resources did you have access to, and how did you get these 2 brand new brands that weren't obviously probably nobody in Toronto knew these brands very well. What did it take to get this off the ground?
I think I look back now and I'm just pure blind drive and optimism. If I could have bottled how I was feeling in that first month, it was pure blind optimism. I want that bottle and I want more of it back now that we look at the state of media. I was just so motivated to do well. I felt pressure to do well for them and say, hey, I put my hand up and said I want to do this. So I had the pressure of that. And I started to tell people when I got home. And then so it added to this idea of now I'm putting it out there that I'm going to launch these. I can't fail. It's a non-starter. And so there was just a hell of a lot of motivation behind me in terms of tangible resources. A couple things I leaned on were my connections that I had prior to leaving to London. I worked for an experiential marketing agency that a lot of those people moved on to in-house with a lot of big clients that I just tapped them up and said, can I meet you? I'm launching a media brand. They were working with the likes of these big alcohol brands, these big CPG brands, and they were helping me navigate the space, and ultimately were some of the funders day one in terms of advertisers. So I leaned a lot on them, and I had a couple of people in the kind of hospitality consulting space, but honestly I just really used the blueprint that I knew worked in London and made some tweaks for the Toronto market and just started to get out there. And I just remember being out every day meeting people and finding a way to kind of connect the dots on how all of these people could help me. But in terms of resources, it was me. I was ghostwriting the whole website, and we would just put Foodism staff, but I was ghostwriting the website, putting the newsletter out, doing all the sales pitching, and would put in lines oh, I'll have to talk to my director, I'll have to talk to the team, and it was just me. But it was a way for me to put those layers in and get deals done. But yeah, it was me for the first probably 5 months. And then I started to bring on some part-time writers.
And was it just a website to start with?
Yeah, there was a website and an Instagram account. And I just had to have enough. The way our back end, our website is all built a proprietary build. And so I think I had to have 20 articles live for the website to go live and function. So it was just me writing those first 20 articles and then maybe 1 or 2 a week to sustain it. And then just trying to get eyeballs on them, trying to get people to sign up for our newsletter. I had a friend, I got to give her a shout out. I had a friend from London that moved back home and was the director of marketing for the Drake group. And at the time, and they still are, but the Drake group was huge. And I hit her up and I just said, I need a favor. Could we do a collaborative contest? And I could get some of that data to start building my newsletter. And she said yes, and just did it. So we got our first couple thousand subs from that contest alone.
And were you given any financial resources to work with, or were you literally just the only thing you had the rights to were the names and you just had to bootstrap this entire thing?
Yeah, basically get my rent paid through whatever advertising I could sell to start. That was it. So there was no other overhead. It was just me. So it was basically just like keep my lights on. And then it started to snowball where I could get enough, a couple thousand every month to cover rent and cover that. And then once I got a couple thousand more, I could hire a writer. It was, there was nothing.
So walk me through a week in the life of Krista circa 2015, 2016. Like, are you like going and reviewing restaurants and taking photos and writing those articles? And then when you're not doing that, you're calling up advertisers. Like, what did your week look like back then?
That's exactly what it looked like, but I loved it. Like I said, if I could bottle that motivation, I was up every day at 6 a.m., just like raring to go. I strategically reached out to every PR agency in the city and was like, add me to your list. I'm launching a magazine. Obviously, it was great that it wasn't this magazine that was coming out of nowhere. I was able to link them to the London version. And at the time, it was the biggest food magazine in that city. And so it carried weight when I said, hey, this is coming to Toronto. So that was a huge benefit. But I got added to every PR list and said, I'm launching this. Invite me to your events, put me on your press lists. So I would say 2 to 3 nights a week minimum, I was out at events, whether that was like reviewing or just like, they never knew where to put me. I was like sometimes at these influencer events and I'm like, I'm not here to like take photos, I'm here to write reviews. And so I think they were trying to figure out where to put me, but a lot of events. And then, I would say like half of my week was writing articles for the website. The newsletter, which now takes us a couple hours, would take me a day and a half because I was learning it. So that was a huge chunk of my week, was writing the newsletter. And then every other moment was spent pitching advertisers, creating decks, trying to get calls, trying to get in rooms, just trying to get any dollars I could in the beginning.
So even though it was just you by yourself, bootstrapping everything, you at least had the imprimatur of this international media company. So every PR person you were pitching thought, oh, she's got a whole staff behind her. She has a London office, all this kind of stuff. But it was really just
the optics of it were certainly very helpful to me. Behind the scenes, it was chaos. But the optics of all of that, really, really helped. It also added an insane amount of pressure because then they're seeing all this and going, wow, this is what it's going to look like. I was going into huge meetings with Loblaws and bringing the London magazine and saying, I'm making this in 6 months, be a part of it. And so I had to deliver. I didn't even know who was printing it, how we were getting it out, but I went in there and said those words. And so it was an insane amount of pressure, but it helped me huge.
And so who were the initial advertisers that came on board?
So Loblaws was our launch partner, which is nuts. Loblaws. Oh, sorry. I didn't realize, where are you based, Simon?
In DC.
Okay. So Loblaws is it's the country's largest grocery chain.
Oh, okay.
So it would be I don't even know.
It would be a Kroger or Whole Foods or something like that. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Kind of that mid to high end. Not your budget grocer, but not your Whole Foods, right in the middle. But it's owned by the Weston family, who own all of Canada. So all that to say, if on the plane back home, if I were to be dreaming up who my launch partner would be, Loblaws would be probably number one. And so I just went for it and tried to connect with as many people as I could and get in there. And I ended up getting in front of them in a boardroom and pitching it. And they came on as our launch partner. So they wrapped our first cover. I should have brought the first one in here, but they wrapped our first cover. They did a whole year-long media buy, and then they helped fund our launch party and brought all the food and some of their chefs and everything. So it was very close to a 6-figure deal, my first big deal. The ones before that were a couple thousand here and there that like covered my rent. And they were the big one. And then there were some wine brands through a distributor here, Pernod Ricard, that came on board in a big way. So it was kind of the two of them were our big launch partners.
So there was a print magazine to begin with, or did it start as a website for like 6 months and then, or what was
it was a website. Yeah, it was a website for exactly a year, actually, just shy of a year. We launched November 2015 was the website, and then first issue of the mag came out in October of 2016. So 11 months later.
And was it like I need to get some initial advertisers for the website and then find a basically a big launch partner to launch the print magazine? That was how it was.
Yeah, I was like I needed to just break even because again I had no reserve or no capital. I didn't want to borrow money, so I basically crunched the numbers of what it would cost me to print 50,000 of the first magazine, get it distributed, get people to write it, what that number was. I figured that out kind of in the springtime and then spent the next 6 months just going out trying to break even on it. And Loblaws coming on was a huge part of that. I think we probably finished with maybe 10 to 12 partners that bought into that first issue, but it covered us and then some, and that helped us then fund issue 2.
Were you doing foodism and escapism both at the same time from the very beginning?
I wasn't, no. So foodism was first, which in London, it was the other way around. Actually, escapism was the gateway to foodism, but I did it the opposite. I launched foodism first, and then within the first year and a half of foodism, escapism became a section to build momentum, build equity, brand equity, and then 2018, we launched the first standalone issue of escapism.
So foodism launches at a print magazine in 2016. Was it monthly at that point?
It was, what did we do, 6 a year? Yeah, 6 a year. So bi-monthly.
And was it still the same model? Like, were you paying people? I don't know what the Toronto, like, public transportation's like, but, like, were you literally, like, as people were getting on trains or buses or something like that, that's where you were handing it out?
Yeah, that was a huge part. That was really important for me to try to bring over here because I saw the success of it in London. I was very naive to how different they run as operating systems city to city because London's been doing it since the beginning of time with like the Evening Standard. We've all seen the Evening Standard guy handing out the newspaper at the tube station. That's ingrained in their culture. It is not ingrained here. And so there was a lot of logistical things to work out for those first few years. It honestly took a lot more work than I had planned. But that was the vision and we did succeed. It just was very, very hard. We didn't have the city on our side. So there was a lot of navigating where we could stand, how we could hand it out. I went through a lot of different companies to find the right people to do it for us, but that's how we were getting them in hands. And then as part of the Loblaws partnership as well, to this day, about 12 of their grocery stores in the city also stock it. So we are able to put a lot of magazines out through their registers as well.
So how did the company evolve over time? Not just from it growing beyond just you as an employee, but also in terms of like online versus print. Like, is it still primarily a print business, or like how did things start once you finally started getting some momentum and you had those like initial sponsors and you could afford to start getting the print magazine? What happened to the company at that point?
Yeah, it was growing quickly. It was really amazing. It was like once we got that first issue out, things started to take off. We certainly were in a surplus then, so I was able to start hiring full-time employees, which was amazing. So between 2016 and 2018, I went from me to having about 10 of us on the team across writing, creative, marketing, and sales. And so that was a huge jump in terms of overhead. We also got an office sometime in between there. So I scaled slowly. Like there was never not a surplus of money to do that. I never borrowed and never needed to look elsewhere. So from that perspective, we scaled slowly in the sense of how I built the team up and got an office and all of the infrastructure. Print continued to grow. Like we would see kind of more money going into every issue that kept going, which was amazing. I think just it becoming more and more known and more brands being excited about it. And at the same time, we were starting to see digital really shift in terms of where brands were spending their dollars. So we were starting to get some really great business on the digital side, which allowed us to put a lot more time and effort into that and grow our newsletters. And then really early on, we started to also see that there was an appetite for brands to reach our readers directly. So working in food and drink, them wanting to get the product in front of people was always paramount. So it was never the original vision, but when they started to ask, well, how can we meet your readers? How could we do an event? I would just start baking that into their proposals and say, we'll do an event with you in the fall. I would run it because I didn't have an events team. And we would do these reader events for them that would, be the thing that got them in the door. And then all of the media around it was just great to have. So we started to do like 6 to 7 reader events every year with like dinners and tastings and stuff like that. So that started to become an arm of the business that was really lucrative for us and certainly got us into rooms that maybe brands were like, well, we don't like print anymore. We're not really sold on it. The event side got us in the door, and that was going really well for us until COVID, and obviously had to stop. But yeah, that's where that brings us to about COVID times when everything changed, is we were doing really well on the event side. Print was still our crown jewel and generating the most buzz and money. But digital was like a close second.
So what happened after COVID? How did the company change?
Well, what didn't happen? That was a crazy time because we were still on the streets handing magazines out, and we were due to hand out our spring issue 2 weeks after that mid-March period of 2020. So we had the magazine done, baked, it was on the printing press, and we had to pivot to direct to home. So from that day onwards, we have not been on the street. We've never been back doing the hand-to-hand, unfortunately. I look back and I'm like, I'm okay with it, because it really was, even up until 2020, a really, really, really hard thing logistically to nail. So in a way, it was maybe a blessing in disguise, because now we're direct to home. So we work with a distributor who specializes in narrowing down postcodes, household income, things like that. And so we're able to really dictate exactly where every magazine goes to now, which from an advertiser perspective, they like that. That's a lot more tangible than just, 10,000 people grabbed it at Union Station. So that was the big thing. Our distribution model was completely flipped within 2 weeks. And we didn't stop production, which was lovely. We still got the spring issue out. We just got it out in a different way. And I do think our model is stronger now because of it. The other thing that changed was we were massively strapped for content. How much more can you write about baking bread at home in COVID? We weren't able to go out to places. And so we were having to get really creative with our content. But we still produced the magazine. We did go down to 4, but we were still kind of, keeping up with production, which was amazing. The event side obviously had to stall, but I kept everyone on payroll. We kept operations going, and luckily for us, some of the verticals that our advertisers worked in were doing really well during COVID, like alcohol. So they were doubling down on advertising campaigns. So we were able to kind of skirt by on that. I would say that the biggest hit for us from COVID actually happened after the pandemic. And that was when paper costs skyrocketed, to print foodism pre-COVID to right after COVID was over 100% increase. and it has leveled out a little, but still never truly. So paper was the biggest thing, and it's why you've seen a lot of print magazines fold after COVID, not during, because that's when we really got hit.
So it continued to be a free magazine, but you somehow did something where you worked with like a data company and you just figured out these are the zip codes we want to mail. So it's not like you had to mail it to the entire Toronto population. You determined these are the most affluent zip codes, and then we'll be able to tell advertisers that this is still an upscale type of audience. Like that was basically it, right? Yeah. But then obviously print, I've covered this and I knew about this, was that like a lot of newspapers, magazines, just during, obviously with the rise of inflation coming and the supply chains basically coming back into full force after the pandemic, like the cost of paper just skyrocketed. So what did so you were no longer doing the kind of on the streets distribution, and what other ways did the business change? Like, has digital become a bigger and bigger part of the business, or is it still primarily a print first business and events?
So events dipped for probably the last 2020 to like 2023. We did no events. We're now back we have a tentpole event every year, the Foodism Icon Awards, which instead of doing little client events throughout the year, we do one big, huge one that we bring in sponsorship dollars. So that's come back with a bang, which is nice because brands absolutely more than ever want that in-person connection with an audience. Digital has certainly risen, but print is still, in terms of like numbers, print still accounts for about 49% of our of all advertising dollars that come into the business. So it's still a huge driver for us, and I think it is because it's really unique in our city. There isn't anyone doing it. And doing it to our level. So when brands see what we do, and they might have this idea of, oh, print's dying, or we don't work in that space anymore, they see what we do and the connection that we have with our readers and how we do our content, and they come on board. So I'm really happy that we are one of those stories where about half of our business is still made up off of funding to print. But then, we saw digital go from maybe 5 to 10% of our business up to 30 to 35 now. So it's been a huge driver. And I think for a few years it was flying, and then big tech came in with Meta campaigns and stuff and has started to strip that back away. So I think for Canadians in particular, like us, growing huge in the digital space will always be clouded by the fact that Meta takes the majority of those dollars. So we've really had to double down on our niche of print.
And like for the advertisers, are they mainly national advertisers? Are they local Toronto advertisers? Because I've heard that
still
like
national. So I would say restaurants don't have any money. We write about them. They do not fund us, and we would never ask them to. There's a couple larger hospitality groups, like national groups, that do have dollars, but the average independents, we write about them. We do not consider them advertisers. We get the majority of our funding, like I said, through alcohol, through grocery, CPG. These are all like national, international brands. And then a lot of tourism boards and food marketing boards. So any produce, any type of proteins, they usually have a marketing board behind them, and they are big supporters of what we do.
And then for the digital advertising, are these like display ads mainly, or are you doing like sponsored Instagram posts? Like what's the online value for brands?
Yeah, all of the above. So we do traditional display, and then we do sponsored content. We do Instagram organic content. We do Instagram ads and like meta campaigns under our halo, but kind of everything. We do soulless mailers, we do event listings, we do a lot of different things on digital. I would say the branded stuff is the most interesting to clients, and same in print. That shouldn't be a surprise. It's definitely a bit harder to sell traditional ads these days. And also our numbers on our site were never meant to be we're not trying to compete with these huge national websites that get millions of views a week. We're meant to be very niche and curated. So display isn't as lucrative for them as, say, a really hard-hitting, well-written piece of content about their brand.
So obviously a lot of like travel media, a lot of food media has like kind of, at least the audiences have migrated to, vertical video and stuff like that. Have you tried to launch like vertical video series, or what's your, like, I know you have a decent size, like 50,000 or so Instagram followers. What's your short form? Do you have a short form video strategy? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, that's really good timing you're asking this, because we're actually very close to launching something in that space. We've just applied for, we're really fortunate that the Ontario government here does support independent publishers on a project basis. So we have submitted a project to work on that we're going to be launching in the summer, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're going into the vertical short form video space. A lot of it has not come down to the fact that I'm not naive to the fact that that's where eyeballs are going and people are consuming content. It's a bandwidth thing for us. I have a small team, and we're, unlike creators, actually like still putting out magazines and doing all this digital content. So we've decided that we are going to partner with creators under the Foodism halo and kind of get that benefit of having the polished and authority of a traditional publishing house, coupled with the creators that can do more of the actual creation of the content, and blend those together and create what we're calling the Foodism Creator Program, and do vertical video in collaboration with them and brands that want to come on board. So we will be in that space by fall. We'll be in that space in a big way.
So what are the lessons that like other, especially legacy media companies, can learn from you? Like, obviously the industry has moved away from print. Some newspapers, at least in the US, have like completely shut down their print operations or reduced them drastically. There's a trend that I've been covering in my newsletter of this kind of revival of print, but in a more targeted fashion, of using it as like a brand builder versus a less of a mass media like business, and more like, how do we target our most engaged or affluent or important like audience members, and then use the website for getting more scale and stuff like that. Seems like that's sort of what you're doing. So what do you think? Do you think that that print is now kind of undervalued and there should be more value placed on print, or what do you think are the lessons that should apply to larger media?
I mean, yeah, like you are saying so much of the stuff that I like believe so passionately about. Like, that's probably the one thing that if I could like scream something from the rooftops, it's exactly that. It's like print absolutely has a space. I think print for the last like decade, maybe just a little less than a decade, it's just been done wrong. It's had a different expectation. It's been put like the same expectation on it as you would for all of these other huge mass media type of content platforms. And it's not meant to be that. Print is very much a choice. It is a choice to sit down and open it and consume it. And the person that is consuming it is really important, because you can target them, and you can catch their attention for more than, what's the average video, like 7 seconds now? It's probably shorter now. It's like 3 seconds. That is like, you can't read anything in our magazine for 3 seconds. It's not meant to be that. So that is my biggest thing, is like, from day one, we have always sold us as who we are and not who we aren't. And teaching my sales team that's been a learning curve, because they'll come from all these different other media places and be like, well, it was always like the race to the bottom for the best price, the best CPM, the best reach, this, that. And I'm like, well, you need to forget all of that, because here it is about the quality of the person on the other side. And we are not trying to compete with those types of content platforms. You need to remember who's consuming our media and sell that, because that attention span and that choice to read us is very important and very different than what else is out there. So that was the kind of biggest thing, is like knowing who we were and knowing who we weren't, and leaning into who we were and hoping that was enough, while still playing the game and developing our social channels, developing digital, bringing in events to it all, rounding it all out, but at our core, knowing that we have a product that 4 times a year people are sitting down with and like truly engaging with, and that has value. And if you can create content, that's the other thing, is the content side of it. So much of what we do in the print magazine is also content, so brand building, like you said. So we'll almost always ask advertisers, like, do you want massive reach? Do you want brand building? We're really good at one of them. You should go somewhere else for the other.
So treat the print as a premium product that is targeted towards a premium audience.
Yeah, 100%. And I just think we kind of have the industry has kind of lost sight of that. And there have been unrealistic expectations on print for many years now.
So when you look ahead like 2 to 3 years from now, what do you want to be doing then that you're not doing now?
I mean, we have to be in the short form video space, like you said. Like, we will be in that space in a big way to complement our other platforms. And we'll also do it in a way that's very authentic to us. So rather than being our own first person creators, we'll be partnering with the right ones. So I'm really excited to see that evolve. Our Foodism Icon Awards have become a really important part of our business, and I want to see that continue to grow. It's starting to really get notoriety around being like the industry type of celebration every year, and we recognize industry individuals for all the great things they're doing. So I would love that to become a household name in the next few years and really allow us to have like a huge stake in the event side of things. And I want to see our quarterly print magazine still out there thriving. We just hit 10 years and I want to hit another 10. So that's the goal.
Okay, Krista, those were all the questions I had for you. Where can people find you online?
So you can find Foodism at foodism.ca. And from there, you can find out where to get the magazine in the city. If you're not on our postcode list, there are lots of places in the city that you can find it through different Loblaws locations and a lot of other retailers. You can sign up for the newsletter there, so you can get that weekly. And then on Instagram, we're the same, Foodism.ca. And I think that's all the places you can find us. If you want to find me, I'm on there too, but it's more interesting to find the brand.
Awesome. Well, it's a lot of fun. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.